Hello and welcome to our episode 2 of our Going Deeper podcast. Guys, we are so excited to release these for you guys because that means that we've got more content for you and hopefully we're just helping you understand what it means to have a relationship with Christ. So, last month we had special guests. This month we have special guests. Let me introduce you. Special-er, as Kara says. We've got Kara with us and also Caleb. Say hello, everybody.
Hey, guys.
It's Caleb.
Hi.
Oh, how exciting. So this month we are going through the book of Philippians, but this podcast is going to be about habits and just what they mean, what they are, and how they relate to us spiritually and the importance of choosing them each and every day. So just so we're on the same page, I have the definition of a habit right here. A settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. There's a lot just packed into that first definition of habit. So I'm super excited to go through these next 4 sections and just hopefully we can have a better understanding of why habits are important, how they relate to our spiritual lives and devotional lives and worship and all of that. So let's get started. Do you have any thoughts right off the bat with habits before I ask my first question?
Well, I would say habits are definitely a thing that can be good or bad.
For sure.
And it's definitely something that, I guess it ties into the first question.
Yeah.
Or one of them that I noticed in here about habits and discipline being related and unrelated. And I think they are.
Yeah. Kara, do you have any thoughts right off the bat of just habits in general, their importance?
Yeah, so when I think of a habit, I think it has negative
Connotations?
connotations. How do you say it? Okay.
Yep.
I think it has negative connotations, and I don't know. I feel like that's just a generic response
Yeah.
that the world or our general worldview of the word habits. But I agree with Caleb that they are good and bad.
Totally.
We just don't tend to view it always as good. So, I mean, yeah, when you ask your first question.
So we can start. What is one habit that you wish you didn't have?
Biting my nails.
Yep.
It's pretty bad.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, I had a hard time narrowing it down because I had
Give us your top 10. No, I'm just kidding.
I feel like I spend a lot of time on my phone.
Yeah.
I kind of have to for my job.
Yep.
But it's very easy for it to trickle into scrolling through social media and not being responsible with the time that I use on it.
Wow.
And another one that I feel like I struggle with is I say yes too much and I overcommit myself, which in the moment, because I'm a people pleaser and don't like letting people down. So I will say, yeah, of course I can do that.
Yeah.
We'll find a way. We'll figure it out.
Yep.
We'll make it work.
And then when the time comes, I'm running late. I'm running from one thing to another. I'm apologizing for not getting it done.
Yeah.
And I'm just running around. And that's definitely one habit that I've realized that I need to work on. And I'm not proud of.
Yeah. I feel like that goes back to what you talked about originally of like there's good sides of habits and there's bad sides of habits. Like even like a lot of what you guys are saying, like it accomplishes a goal, but it's not like the way you do it isn't exactly what you're looking for. Like, saying yes all the time, or like even like you're like I have to be on my phone for work, but then there's like a negative side or like the coin flips where it's like, oh, now this trickles into different areas of my life that I wish it hadn't actually trickled into.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Side note, Caleb was on time. He did
yes.
not overcommit himself
to the
today.
minute, so I was not
to the minute.
Rolled in.
I was not
right
1 minute early.
He was not sharp. He was on time.
No, perfect. He's learning. Habits are going away.
Yep.
Releasing those.
Starting a new good habit today. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Before we move on, what's another bad habit you wish you didn't have, Kara?
Comparison.
Ooh.
I think that one's a big one people
that goes
struggle
so
with.
deep.
It goes so hard.
Totally.
But I feel like it's such a natural response. And it's like, is habitual a word? It's so habitual. And people just do it without, it's a reflex.
Yeah.
Somebody walks into the room, hair, eyes, no, whatever. Or, oh, they can do that, or and it's just so defined in our brains.
Yep.
And I didn't even realize like it was a habit until I thought about it.
Yep. Definitely. And I feel like a lot of the times, even this kind of goes with like gossip too, like it'll be in a conversation, and like if the conversation like dies down a little bit, your initial response is to be like, oh, did you see what that person had? They had like, it's like a default almost of like, instead of being uncomfortable with a conversation, you're choosing to do something that you know you shouldn't be doing just to like move the conversation on. Or if it's like, oh, there's some people in my life where like I know they expect me to, or they do this themselves, to complain. And like, so I will be having a great day, and then I'll see them walk in, talk about it for a little bit, and then conversation dies down, and you're like, oh, in my day this happened, and then you like totally go off some other tangent. You're like, I was having a good day, like I didn't even need to complain. But because you know like that's what that person expects, you like start comparing, or you start gossiping or whatever. Like, yeah, that goes so deep.
Okay, now you can move on.
Now I can move on. Okay, awesome.
You have my permission.
How have your habits formed who you are?
I would say, in general, habits create a pattern that, whether good or bad, like we talked about before, that kind of create a fallback or a default.
Wow.
And so you want to make sure that when you create those habits, because you're going to, fall back to them when you're not focused or when you're not paying attention. So you want to make sure that they're good habits and not bad ones.
Yep.
Because it's so easy to fall back on bad habits.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's very hard to fall back on good ones without effort.
Yeah. That's so good. Kara, what do you think?
So there's a quote that I have. It's pretty neat. Okay. Thoughts lead to actions, actions lead to habits, and habits lead to lifestyle. So I don't know. When Caleb was talking, I think we need to acknowledge that our thoughts will turn into actions, and then our actions do turn into patterns or habits, and then that forms a lifestyle. And then we need to be aware of if that's a lifestyle we want to be living, and if that's something we need to change, or maybe it's something great, because like we said, habits can be good.
Yep.
I think your habits, it gives you a reputation, right?
Wow.
And whether we like it or not, I was just listening to a sermon a couple weeks ago, and the speaker was talking about titles, or like nicknames, basically. And like David, he has all these in the Bible: the man after God's own heart, the Lord's anointed one, the slayer of 10,000s. And David's actions gave him titles, which as humans we tend to like refer and even acknowledgingly lean towards them or on them, and we love titles. Yeah. We love them. We refer to them. We are a little too attached to them at some point. And like David didn't do those and like earn those titles by, just doing some things outside. It's something he did and was like pronounced, I guess. And
because of his actions.
Yeah,
totally.
So, yeah, I think we need to be like wary of our actions and developing habits, and because just like to catch it early, it's where it begins, because it can snowball, right? And it can just get so easy. It can fall like one minute of quick checking social media can turn into, oh, now it's 15 minutes, now it's 30, now it's, well, I've spent it 30 minutes, why don't I go to 45, right? I think we have to be aware and catch it early, because it does affect us more than we think.
Yeah, totally. I feel like it's really easy also to like be like, oh, I don't necessarily have habits, or I don't have tendencies, I don't really know, but like you have those whether you create them or not. And so like creating them to begin with, like you said, like catching it early, catching our thoughts, like that's where like change actually happens. And like you wonder why there's so many diets out there, there's so many like workout plans, there's so many things to try. It's because people like, I feel like, don't grasp the concept of like catching it in your mind first, changing those thoughts, because then they're going to change your actions, and then your actions change your lifestyle. So like just thinking about ways that like your habits are forming who you are. And again, like you said, whether it's beneficial or not, like just acknowledging those things. And like something that's super helpful but also really exposing is like your screen time usage, like weekly report, like whether it feels like you're using that or not, or like so many times I'll justify like, but I was using maps, or like, but I was like, I was on the phone, or like I was on a FaceTime call or something like that. But I'm like, regardless, this is what I was choosing to spend my time doing. And like you said, is it beneficial or is it not? I don't know. Like just now, I also just like look at the time in your life as a young adult, like this is the time to like take inventory of those things, so that going forward you can be like, oh, this is the impact of those things. And because I started these, Pastor Josh talked about it in his podcast episode a few months ago, like because I'm starting these healthy rhythms now, this is how it's going to impact my future. And I just like that layout of like your thoughts, your actions, and your lifestyle.
Right, because I mean, I think we're human, and since we do gravitate towards titles and we hold our reputation so dearly, and we always care what people think, and that's a hard thing to overcome. But at the same time, it also kind of, I mean, it forms who you are, because it gives you that, like, if you're on your phone all the time when you're around people, like, you're going to be that girl or that kid who's always on their phone, and it's like, oh, have you met so-and-so? Well, no, I mean, they're always on their phone, so, and then they have that title, and then, like, you have to be, I don't know, careful and where, which, I mean, we've already said, but.
Totally. Caleb, what other thoughts do you have on this?
Well, like you said about what Josh said in his podcast, I think it really is a good time, you know, as you go from school to just out of school, starting a job, and, you know, as you step into the next life stage, it's really a good time to start good habits. And I mean, I like to say it's a time when you have extra time. I feel like I have zero as a young adult, but I think you probably definitely don't have any more time as you get further into your life. You know, as you get married and have kids and stuff. And that is, from what I've experienced from friends, you lose even more of your so-called free time that you think you have. So utilizing that time that you do have right now is huge, and starting those good habits with the time you do have is really a good time and a good way to start right now.
Well, and I think we want all these good things, but we often don't want to accept the responsibility that comes with them. For sure. So, like, and I think as a young adult, that's so important, because we're going from one phase where we're relying so heavily on our guardians and then our schooling, like school, whether you were homeschooled or public school or whatever. I mean, you had a set schedule, stuff you had to accomplish, and that was just your routine. And then your mom and dad are like, bed by 10 p.m. or whatever, and then you eat suppers at the same time when mom or whatever gets home from work. And so we're so set into that, and then we're moving into this transition into the world where we're doing these things by ourselves. And we need that push, and that we need to accept the responsibility into our own hands to do these things to make our life better and have these habits that will affect our future selves.
Totally. What do you think God's intended purpose was with creating habits and tendencies? Because you see, even people that aren't intentional, or maybe they like smoked a cigarette once when they were 16 and then it became a habit and now they have never stopped. Like, we have those tendencies, whether you kind of realize those or not. What do you think God's intended purpose was with creating those habits, or creating us with the tendency to create habits?
I think God gave us habits and tendencies to give us the choice to be a good steward with the decisions that he's given to us to make.
That is so good.
That is really good.
And I think that's why, you know, free will and choice is a gift. You might see it as, you know, why does God, you know, not allow this or not allow that? But the opportunity to make the choice to glorify him is really a gift.
That's so good. We should just end the podcast now. That's like, that's so good.
That was good.
That was good.
It was nice knowing you guys. Sorry, not knowing. That sounds like I'm dying or you're dying.
Nice seeing you guys.
Nice seeing you guys. See you next month. Yeah.
That was so good. Yeah, really good. I think that's awesome. Kara, what do you have? What do you have for us?
Oh, wow. Okay. So now I have to go after that. So I guess I kind of looked at it a little differently. Mm-hmm. I thought about how, God made us. He created us, and he created us in his own image, right?
Yeah.
And we are made to be in relationship and communion with him. Mm-hmm. And so when we don't do that, right, we have this void, this longing in our hearts to be filled by him that can only be filled by him. And lots of people are filling that with all the other worldly things that they can find because they don't want to, they just don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. But I think it's interesting because since we have that longing and we have that purpose and it's woven into our DNA to be with God, that basically when we have that, I think he created that so that we, like devotions or being at meetup nights or just like Bible study, church, whatever, when we connect with him, we feel that and then we want more of that. And since that's filling that void we have in our hearts that was made for him, we tend to get into this thing like we show up, we do these things that will replenish our souls, and then we can give out to others. And I feel like that it just kind of intertwines God's design for making us and who we are as his creation and his people.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think it's so cool. This is why we do this. Like, having different people here is because you get to hear those different perspectives. Like, both of you are right, and it's cool that, like, we get to hear from both of you. And, like, whether you see it as a gift or it's, like, God created us with a need for him, which is also a gift because it's a free choice, right? Like, that is something that, like, is... I see a visitor. That is something that's, like, that's just so powerful to recognize, and it's so powerful to hear from just a few different people. Yeah.
I think going off of his, too, I work in the ER, so I see a lot of people who have bad habits that, and because of their decisions from the beginning point, they have developed this habit that they just can't get out of it, and they're just sucked into it, and it just, not saying they can't, it's just a lot harder to overcome. And I think one of the saddest parts about that is seeing how it affects other people.
Totally.
And just another view on it is, like, our habits not only affect ourselves, but they affect the people around us. Like, if our actions have equal and opposite reactions, I guess. So, and whether that's a good thing and they're like good consequences per se, or if it's a bad thing and it's bad consequences.
Yeah.
But I think that's a thing with free will and what Caleb was saying earlier too, that we need to be aware of the people we're affecting as well, instead of just like only ourselves and our habits, because our habits can be a broader and affect a wider range of people than just ourselves.
Totally. It's like our decisions we make. God made us with the ability to glorify him.
Right.
And, like, become a reflection of him. Caleb, what other thoughts do you have?
I think, like Kara said, it's not yourself that your habits impact alone. It's the people around you, whether it's your family, your friends, just people in public. If you have a negative habit or negative attitude, people are going to see that. People are going to pick up on that.
Yeah. And
the way you glorify God is by reflecting him. And if you have a habit that's affecting the people around you, that's not glorifying God, then, it might not be a bad habit, but if it's not glorifying God, then it's not good.
Totally. I feel like that's a good way of, like, a lot of the times if you have maybe been in the church for a while, it's kind of maybe a bit, we fall into human nature where it's like, well, I'm not, like, killing people. Like, I'm not committing
it's not
adultery.
Mass murder.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we kind
There's
of
only one or two.
Kayla.
Exactly. Like, we see these like larger things and we could say like, my sin's not as bad. And like, we fall into that temptation of comparison. But it's,
at least I didn't do this.
exactly. That's a good way of like measuring, and we aren't saved by works, but because we have a relationship with Christ, we need to like measure ourselves if we are glorifying God with the things that we do, and if we're stewarding the time that he's given us well. And so that's a good way of measuring, like, what areas of my life, whether it's when you're at work or if it's when you're alone in your house, like, what things are you doing that is not bringing glory to God? Like, that's a powerful way to start and like dig a little bit deeper into your relationship with Christ. If maybe you feel like you are a good person, like a lot of us do, we kind of fall into that where it's like, yeah, I'm a good person. Like,
yeah, don't say that around Ray Comfort.
Yeah, exactly. So like, yeah, that's a good way to measure like what areas of your life can you still be growing in.
And I think too, like, thinking about that, how does it affect God? He made us, and just like the sorrow that like it's affecting him as well as other people and ourselves. Yeah. And we're really, I mean, if it's a bad habit, we're really just causing ultimate destruction all around us. It's really not helping out anybody except for maybe like a good 2 seconds or whatever. Yeah.
Our section 2 that we're going to be talking about is spiritual habits and their benefit. So what spiritual habits do you have, or that you feel the effect of? What spiritual habits do you have that you feel the effect of?
I think for me, prayer and worship are probably two of the biggest ones. Cool. Whenever I'm feeling discouraged or down, I think really like the worship nights are huge, and definitely, I think not that it is any more spiritual, but I think everybody has their own, whether it's prayer, whether it's, just talking to God, whether it's worship, however your connection with God is. I think whatever brings you closer to him is really, it's for you. And for me, that's prayer, and it's definitely worship.
Cool. Yeah.
Kara, what do you think? It's different for everybody. So I do like my devotions every day. Yeah. And not to mistake that for like, oh, I do it every day, so that makes me so great and on this pedestal. Yeah. But
what's your streak on the Bible app?
I don't actually have that Bible app. I use a different one.
Your spiritual meter.
I know, it just went down. There's Caleb and Rochelle, and then there's Kara.
Stop it.
God. Okay. But I've noticed, I guess, like, that starting my day off with like scripture and prayer, like it changes my mindset. And especially like I've done devotions before because I'm like, I want to know God and I want to spend time with him, because if I love somebody and respect somebody, why wouldn't I put my time and effort into them? And so it's a very important relationship in my life, so that's why I guess do it, and it fills into me or feeds into me. But I see it like, especially this past year, I don't do like New Year's resolutions or anything, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
Exactly. Wait till the new year to restart it.
Anyway, so, but around like January of last year or late December, I was like, man, I need to have a different outlook and like positive, and just be like more positive, because it's really affecting my day, my everyday basis. Yeah. And so I used to do like my devos at night, which is great because I'm more awake, I'll say, at night, and I have probably more thoughts and just can focus. But I was like, I think everybody talks about having devotions in the morning, which is great. I'm like, good for you if you're a morning person or whatever. But I never thought of applying that to myself. And so I really took it, I think, this past year to just start my day with God. Wow. And just, I guess, just like my mindset as well, just like I'm going to be thankful for every single breath the Lord has blessed me with every single day, and I'm going to pray that he shows me opportunity and how I can help and serve and honor and glorify him in all that I say and do. So just like having that mindset when I wake up, I will say, like, I haven't always done it in the morning.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just, you sleep in and you're like, oh,
yeah,
gotta go. But I think it's crazy because I think my coworkers too, even at work, they're like, wow, Kara, like, thank you. Cause I mean, in the ER, we all joke around. And so everybody's like, oh no, we're here again.
Yeah.
We're back to this place.
Yep.
Like, least favorite place on earth. And I'm like, why do you work here?
Different conversation.
And then I noticed these people, like, we have certain nurses who are just like about everything, and nothing seems to damper their mood. And I'm just like astounded by that. I'm like, I want to be that way. I want to be a light. And then when people ask me, why are you so happy? I'll be like, Jesus, man, that's my guy.
Yeah.
And I think it's just changed, and I've been a lot happier overall. So I think that habit and, like, developing that mindset with, like, God and him, I guess, pouring into me as well, it just starts so new. And just to have that
totally
recognition
of
that he's there and he's pouring into me so that I can pour out into others. It gives you so much more purpose, right?
Wow.
And as humans, we thrive off of our purpose, and if we don't have a purpose, we are hopeless.
Yeah.
And so to recognize that Jesus is that purpose, that ultimate goal, and to live our lives how we are created for him, by him, and that's where our identity comes from. So
that's good. That'll preach a whole message right there. No, that's awesome. No, like, I've noticed in my life, I haven't just, like, through high school, I didn't always do devotions in the morning, but I noticed the times when I had the most peace and the most, like, the least anxious thoughts, and, like, that anxious pit in your stomach, like, is when I started my day off with scripture. Like, you're right, it is morning, and I don't retain all of it all of the time. Sometimes it'll be in the afternoon, I'll be like, wait, what did I even read this morning?
Gotta read it again.
Yeah, exactly. But it affects your day so greatly. So, like, you're right, everybody has totally different tendencies and, like, things they gravitate towards in ways that they feel connected to God. But, like, both of those things are really great ways to continually feel connected to him.
I think about that too, because just this Monday I did not get sleep Sunday night, really.
Yeah.
And so my alarm went off at 5, and I was like, I'll just do devotions in the afternoon. Yeah. Press, whatever. And then I woke up and I went to work. And my day just was like, Yeah. And I'm like, God, I need you in my day. And, like, cool. I acknowledged him while I was at work, and I was praying and stuff to him. So I was able to have that connection and go off of it. But I was like, dude, just the realization that I didn't start my day with Jesus really just kind of messed me up. And it's like almost an eerie feeling. Yeah. Not to have, like, God right off the bat when you, like, wake up in the morning. And I don't know, it was just so different. And I was like, it just made me realize how much more I want him in my life. Wow. And want him to be my every breath, and, like, that I live for, and that I wake up to him every morning, Yeah.
Well, do you have any other thoughts on this first question before we move on?
Well, I was just going to ask you guys, because I'm more of a morning person, but
he can't relate to us.
But would you say you notice a difference in going from evening devotions to morning, and it was more difficult in the morning? Did you have to put more of an effort towards it? And did that make a difference in your mindset about it? Because if you were more awake in the evening and it was easier, it was just maybe going through the motions, doing your devotions, where it's like, I'm going to get up, I'm going to read my devotions, I'm going to spend the time with the Lord in the morning. And, maybe it had more drive towards doing it.
I think of it like I tithe my time for God, like, each and every day. It was like kind of what when you tithe first, and then all of your bills get paid. You have all the groceries, and like everything falls into place. There'll be mornings where I'm like, shoot, woke up 5 minutes late. I am just going to go straight to making breakfast, getting ready. And then like I'm rushed the entire morning. But I've noticed that mornings that you're like where I am intentional and I do choose to do it in the morning, everything else I have time for. And like there'll be mornings where I skip breakfast because I skipped my devotions, didn't have time, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm late and then I leave. And like I just have noticed that. Like there'll be times where I'll be like, shoot, do I read all of this or do I stop halfway? But the times where I read it completely, take a moment, pray, like reset myself is when I do, like, it feels like the same kind of like spiritual principle as when I tithe. Like everything for the next hour I've never had a morning, I maybe shouldn't say never, can't remember a morning where everything has been like disheveled when I have like sat down, read my Bible, prayed, and then started to get ready. So yeah, I definitely feel the effects of it, like of what it means to be intentional.
Yeah, I like that about tithing the 10%, not just during the day, but first. I mean, your first 10% to God, and then the rest is just a gift that He's given you. Totally.
So I'm a woman of God and sleep. I love my sleep.
I didn't know where you were going with that. I was like, wow, she is a woman of God.
Well, okay, yes, I was going to just say a woman of sleep, but then I was like, this is a Bible chit chat, so like maybe I should clarify that Jesus got me first and then the sleep.
And then the sleep. Okay. And sleep.
But
sorry.
I love sleep, Caleb. I don't think you understand what sleep does for me. Anyway, so
yes.
You think I'm talkative now? No, wait until I get a full 8 hours. But no, so especially like when I did devotions at night, I was more in high school, and then I don't know. I guess I had stuff booked till the end of the night, and then I had people who wanted to hang out and do stuff, and I knew that I'm like, okay, if I hang out with this person, I need to go home and do my devotions, because you're going to have to stay up and you're going to have to sacrifice that sleep so that you can have time with your Savior, right?
Yeah.
Like that is important to me, and I will be spending time with Him, and if you want to lose sleep over that, Kara, you're going to have to do it. So that did hold me accountable a bit. But in the morning, I will say, I haven't always stayed awake during all of them. I'll tend to zonk out, and I'm like,
I'm glad you can be honest.
It's hard, but I have noticed that waking up intentionally and being like, excuse me, this time is for the Lord.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have more energy because of that.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
Like again, I won't say every single day is like beautiful rainbows and butterflies, because I mean, sometimes like Monday I was like, I'll just do it in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And then other times I'll just, no matter how hard I try, I just physically cannot stay awake. There'll be like 20 times I like catch myself and then I don't understand any of it, and then I'd just rather do it later when I'm more awake and can understand, because there's no point in doing it if I'm not retaining any of it. Yeah. So, but I do like the giving my first part of the day, and I think that has made me more of a positive person. And I've just seen a huge change within the last year of that. I've been happier and have had a better mindset and just base to go off on the day.
Yeah.
And especially because, I believe you should give your time to Jesus, whatever that may look like for you. You should pour your time and energy into Him because He's a priority, right? Mm-hmm. And so just to have that first outlook of the day has made me so much more thankful and less of a complainer.
It's good.
And I think too, the sacrifice of your time, whether you're leaving a friend's house early, I think that can be, a way to witness. Maybe they're like, oh, why do you have to go home? Or,
that's right. Yeah.
I have a friend, and we know who he is. I'm not going to name him, but may or may not get to work, an hour and a half before he needs to, and spends time in the Word praying. And
if you're listening to this, I know exactly what he's talking about.
He's probably listening to this at 2 times speed at work. So,
outing him. And there's a select few who know exactly who we're talking about. That's
we love you. It's okay.
No hate here, but I think that could be something where somebody would go, hey, why do you do that?
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity right there.
Right
You can share Jesus with them and be like, hey, this is how I start my day. This is what makes the difference. And they can see that difference in you too.
Kind of goes along, with the next question, but like God sees the condition of our heart. And so kind of when we're talking about like this early morning, or maybe if it's something out of your comfort zone, like God doesn't need us to memorize the Bible, because there's people of other religions who know the Bible really well. And that doesn't mean they know Jesus as their savior, but God knows the condition of our heart. And so like, for me, at least, when I wake up early, or maybe if I go to a worship service that I'm not like excited to be there, like God knows, but I'm still saying this is my time, and God, I want to surrender this to you. Like, he's faithful to that as well. And like, I'm more apt if I get up in the morning and say like, God, this is your time, like, and I sleepily read through Ezekiel or Lamentations or wherever I'm in, and I'm like, I got nothing from that. God, like, help me. I'm more apt to like later that evening spend more time in prayer and like actually. But then next time I go through it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that from last time. And so it's cool to see how God like weaves those things into our lives.
I saw this one post of this one lady this guy who talked about his grandma, and anytime she started a prayer, she said, and he was like, Grandma, why do you always say and? She goes, well, I started talking to him at the very first like time I woke up this morning, and the rest is just, oh yeah, and Jesus. And I was actually like so genuinely happy. Like last week, I caught myself doing that, and I was like, and God, I'm like, oh, because I started like right when I got up, and I was like conscious. I was like, hey, Jesus, okay, whatever. And we got into prayer, and then the rest of the day I was like, oh, wow. And then I could just see him work, and then I found myself talking more to him, just like in my head. And it was great.
Yeah. How do you think discipline and habits are related, or are they unrelated? Or what are your thoughts?
I think they're related because to have good habits takes discipline. Like we just talked about if you're going to switch whatever time you do your devotions, if you're a morning person, then doing them in the evening or doing them in the morning, and that takes discipline to build those good habits.
For sure.
Oh, also, because people who know me, they know how much I love sleep, right?
Yeah.
So then I think it also shows my priorities, right?
Which goes along. So I'm just gonna with our next question, which we can pair these together with. How do you think creating a habit communicates value?
Right.
Proceed.
No, so I actually,
that's great. Keep going.
But no, because I mean, then people are like, oh wow, we know she's not gonna get up before she like absolutely has to.
Yeah.
And like I was the girl who got up like 15 minutes before I had to be somewhere, and I just got there. Yeah. Did the necessities and left.
Yeah.
And so for me to get up like a whole hour before I have to,
it's huge.
5 a.m, you guys. not for me. Might be for you and the other person we were chit-chatting about. But that's big.
Communicate so much value to, and again, like we're talking about condition of your heart, like to your Savior. He sees that that you want a relationship with him and you want to know him. And like you were talking about earlier, that provides such an opportunity to witness like to the people around you, and like whether they knew you before you decided that or not, but like if they did, like what a cool way. Because like again, if you've grown up in church, you might not have those like massive like I was a drug addict, now I'm not because Jesus saved me, which he does, which is amazing. But you might not have always those kind of crazy dramatic stories, but you might have those little like ways God's protected you in your life that are relatable, of like, oh, I never thought of doing that, I never thought of switching that one thing, but it communicates so much value to like who you believe Jesus is.
Well, and too, if you like go to an event and it's in the morning and you say like, oh, I got up at 5, and they're like, why'd you get up like a whole hour early? Like, why do you need that much time? I'll be like, devotions. I had to do my devos, or that's whatever. And then they're like, oh.
Yeah.
So it is an opportunity, I think, so.
For sure. Awesome.
It's a habit that affects the people around us.
So good.
Wow,
So
the
good.
connection.
I know. This is why we're here, man. This is why we're here. Where do you think the balance between a habit and a relationship with Jesus is? In kind of the way of like, you can mindlessly do things. You can mindlessly know maybe the things of God without knowing God. So what are your thoughts on that? Whoever wants to go first.
I think if the habit takes you away from pursuing his will for you, that's really where you have to balance it, whether it's good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
If it draws you away from him and his will, then it's really something you should reconsider if it's worth worth your time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because your time is so valuable. And I think it's kind of like the previous question about where's your habits creating value.
Yeah.
And like you said, it could be the same with money. Where your money goes is where your priorities are.
Yeah.
Where your time goes, that's where your priorities are.
So good.
So by taking the first 10% of your day in your time, you could translate that to where's the other 90% going?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other 90%, is it going towards good habits, bad habits, or sleep?
Yeah, for sure. I
noticed
noticed that a few months ago, I was like getting home from work, and because there just wasn't a boundary set, I was getting home from work at like 4:30, 5 o'clock. I'd turn on my TV, whatever, just have it background noise, and then I'd end up like going to bed at 10 without ever like shutting my TV off. And it was just on for like hours. And I would find myself some evenings like talking about, wow, I'm never active. I'm not as active as I want to be. I'm not eating as I want to be. I'm not like grocery shopping as I want to be. And I would find like I caught myself with the habit of like turning my TV on and leaving and then getting like sucked in and sitting there for hours. Like, and it wasn't like in years of this. It was probably only a few months. But like I caught myself and was like, I'm going to set the boundary in this other 90% of my time of like, I'm not turning my TV on until I've been home for a few hours. I've like gone on a walk. I've eaten like a good dinner and cleaned up. Like those 3 boundaries, cool. If I've done those 3 things, I can turn on the TV. And I found out that like the more if I would do these 3 things, my desire to just sit and watch TV and like turn off my mind was much, much lower. And then it ended up being 7:45 or 8 o'clock, which is like way past when I said that I would like be able to turn the TV on. So like it's cool to see like when you're saying like we prioritize that to other 90% of the time and how we prioritize it. Like that's when we see those other desires. It's kind of like a seek first his kingdom, right? Like we see those other desires that we're like, when I seek first God, and then I'll be able to like have all this money and buy all these things. And like that's like not what he's asking for you. Like when you seek first his kingdom, then the rest of the stuff does truly fall into place. You're like, this is the healthy habit he's wanting for me. Like I understand now. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I basically just wrote down like you need to do it out of your own desire.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can, I don't know, like it can be a habit that doesn't mean anything to you, or it can get, whatever, like the relationship with Jesus. So I think there's a difference there, like where a habit is more sometimes we're just doing, where a relationship with Jesus is more intentional.
Yeah.
We want that. And, well, yeah, we want
good.
that. But, and then like we hunger and thirst for righteousness. Like we want to be there. And I also had
That's
like
cool.
the Matthew 6:33, seek thee first the kingdom of God. Because when we're seeking that, and I mean, he also says, remain in me and I will remain in you. So it's not just that we're like giving this time and there goes an hour of my day. It's we're receiving, we're actually benefiting from that.
Yeah.
And I think, it's whatever it may be, however much time, but just like we were talking earlier, having that time changes the whole day.
Yeah.
So it goes from 1 hour to 24 hours, right? And I think it's crazy. And then I also think that along with like doing it out of the desires of our heart, because like we're like hungry and thirsty for righteousness, like that's something I pray too, because I'm just like, God, I want to be hungry and thirsty for you.
That's so cool.
Because like, he's great. Love Jesus. Love that man. Okay. Yeah. And, but I think Paul, like, he talks about in 2 Corinthians of when he's talking about giving, not to do it out of a reluctant heart, or like if you're gonna, I don't really want to. So I think it's also, we want time with Jesus, but we need to be like wanting it, not just doing it to do it.
Yeah.
It's not a checklist. It's you need to have your mind there, and like even, I mean, yeah, like maybe you don't want to do it, but since it is a priority, you are going to do it. It's going to be a thing, but it's not reluctantly, I guess. 'Cause I think that's something, because like habits, I also feel again like it's a reflex comparison, right? Once you walk through the door, it's like, oh, this, that person can do this, whatever. It's just a reflex. It's there, and we're just easy to where I feel like a relationship with Jesus is more intentional. Yeah. And I think we do have to be more disciplined with that, because a habit will just come easy. And you can make like doing devos a habit. Like I'd say it's a habit for me, but it's also, I feel like there's more effort into that than just like brushing your teeth.
Yeah, definitely.
You know? Yeah. I would hope so, at least.
Totally. So we can jump down to our last question we have here. What advice would you give someone who is overwhelmed with the amount of spiritual habits that they have to form?
I would encourage somebody and say that the amount of spiritual habits you have to follow isn't so much a requirement as a desire. So once your heart is in the right position and you desire God and the things of Him and His will, those spiritual habits come easier.
Yeah.
Now, they're not going to always be easy. I was listening to a podcast, and he was talking about Nehemiah, and when they were building the wall, they got halfway through and just hit a wall, no pun intended, and they didn't think they could do it. And the reminder, it's so hard when you're in the middle of something to see. It's so hard when you're in the middle of something to not see that you've come halfway. So you've only got halfway to go. And if you got there, you know, if you got there, how far, and if you got halfway, you only have halfway to go, and you've already done half the work.
That's cool.
It's a puzzle. Our life is literally a puzzle. I always think of that analogy as like, we're constantly doing things and we're putting each single piece down. We're just like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. It's so tedious and monotonous. But then it's like, if you take a step back and look at the big picture, it's like, whoa, it's filling in. It's becoming something. Look at like what God has made you to be. Look at who He has formed you. Look at where He's brought you into all of these little pieces into something beautiful and so detailed and organic. So I think that's cool.
And one more thing with the amount of spiritual habits, if it's a good spiritual habit, there is going to be spiritual attack from the enemy. You're not going to have sunshine and rainbows for every good habit that is godly. You're going to be attacked, and it's going to be hard. And you have to realize that it might get worse before it gets better.
Right.
But it's never going to stay how it is. It's always going to get better when you're pursuing God and His desire and His will. And there's a verse in Hebrews 3:13, but encourage one another daily. So that's building a habit of encouraging one another. As long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sins, deceitfulness. Yeah. So by encouraging one another, it helps when there is that evil attack of building good spiritual habits.
Yeah, that's so cool. I also feel like something God encourages me with is like there's never any wasted time in His presence. Right. And like sometimes you can go to the gym and you tool around for 20 minutes and you're like, that was a waste of my time. Sometimes you can say yes to going to helping out with something and you stand around and do nothing and you're like, that was a waste of my time. But like there is no wasted time in His presence. And so if you're like finding yourself really overwhelmed with like, I have to worship, I have to read my Bible, I have to pray, I have to go to church, I have to go to young adults on Monday night, I have to get plugged into a group, I have to find a boyfriend, I have to marry him because he loves Jesus, like build a family, all this stuff. Like if you're overwhelmed with the amount of habits, like starting somewhere is like there's no wasted time in His presence. Like that's not going to be something that you're going to be like, shoot, I wish I wouldn't have spent that extra 10 minutes like praying. Or if you have a bad 20 minutes of like you couldn't focus, that's still like, I've learned that God can use that, and like he can bring things back from those times where you're like, I didn't feel like that was important, or I didn't feel like that was productive, but he can like, he redeems all things, and he can redeem that in your life as well.
I think it's important to like acknowledge and like just get out there that the habit in and of itself or whatever isn't what makes you a better Christian, because
that's
I think
good.
I mean, I feel like we can tend to get on these levels of, oh, like, I read my Bible every day. I'm not, oh, I read my Bible every day and on this level now, and you only do it like 2 times a week or something. Because I could be doing that and not, and I could just
my streak in the Bible app is higher than yours.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can be going through the motions, but like somebody who does it like 2 times, who's like giving maybe like hours of their time, right? Because that's just, it works into their schedule, and that's when they can fully, like, they can be getting way more out of that than I can if I like am just going through it just the same way of like showing up to church doesn't make you a Christian.
So good.
It's great that you're here. We love to have you,
and God can still move,
it's and God's there, and it's a good step to take.
Yeah,
but that is not, oh, that family that comes every single day, they must be so holy, and God loves them more than me or something, right? Like, I think that's really important. So for the overwhelming factor that you were talking about, like people getting overwhelmed because it's like, oh my word, but this person does this and this and this and this and this and this. But it's like, calm down, because everybody, they function differently. Yeah. And like, even just quiet and peace and just putting yourself being in the presence. Yeah, being still. Like, God can work so abundantly and amazingly through everybody. And like, you look at the Bible, and it has multiple stories where he's using people in so many different ways that you wouldn't have even thought of or like thought to be possible. So I think, I don't know, it's just important that like we don't fall back into that comparison of, oh, well, I need to do this. I need to be a good Christian, ideal Christian. Because that, a good Christian isn't the one who shows up to church. Yeah, they probably will show up to church because they will have, that desire, like, oh, I want to be fed and all that. So those are good things, but it's not what makes you a Christian, and it's not what you have to like necessarily achieve this, and this, because again, then we fall back into that checklist. And I mean, I can tell that like by doing those things, lots of people are fed and poured into, and like it's great. And so I would say, like, that's one thing, like, don't get caught up in, oh, well, I need to do this spiritual thing, this, because I guarantee you, Caleb and we're already completely different people. But if you looked at our like relationship with God, like lifestyle, we'd again be totally different in how we interact with things. And that's not saying he's better than me or I'm better than him, but I don't know. So I think it's important not to get overwhelmed and caught up in that factor, but just rather let's find out together like what works for you and what makes you
God
feel,
asking you to do,
and what makes you feel his presence, and just to be like surrounded by him, and where you're feeling and you're giving. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's good. Like, as you guys are talking, I'm just thinking, like, what's God asking you to do right now? How can you be obedient right now? Because when we're obedient, that takes that factor out of like, but they're doing this. I mean, still, you might still feel it, but like that takes that out. But well, guys, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all your thoughts. That was an awesome discussion. Yay. And we love you guys. You guys are the best.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Guys, we're so excited to be releasing episodes every single month. So if you've made it this far, we'll see you next month. We love you guys.
Bye.
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo, guys. Oh, I feel like